Chapter 91. So it turned out that the boss had a great background. Oh yeah, are you the boss's sister? Zhao Feng wiped away the table and turned to look at Zhang Li with a smile. My brother's surname is Zhang, and mine is also Zhang. What do you think? Zhang Li replied. Where is your hometown? Zhao Feng had always been curious about Zhang Han, and had never asked him about it on several occasions. It was because he felt that the boss rarely chatted with people, and might not even pay attention to him, and this beauty in front of him was Zhang Han's younger sister. She could tell a lot of news about Zhang Han, so Zhao Feng asked Shangjing. Zhang Li replied simply. Shangjing, the capital of China, the most complicated place in the mainland. Zhao Feng smiled slightly and said, then the boss must be mighty in Shangjing, right? Hearing that, Zhang Li sized Zhao Feng up from head to toe and did not reply. Although she did not say it, one of them said something. Only that Zif, who was sitting at the table, laughed without raising her head, and snorted. Hey, not only is he powerful, let me tell you this. My brother-in-law was previously one of the great young masters of the Shangjing. He was the eldest young master of the Zhang family. His identity is not just for show. I also heard that my brother-in-law was extremely arrogant in the past, and was almost unstoppable in the Shangjing. Although he is considered to be the lowest ranked of the four young masters, the other three young masters did not dare to provoke him because he would truly beaten up. Zif said all of these in one go, and all the information she received was from Xian's friends. That person had said that Zhang Han had been an extreme powerful person in the past, and he had also mentioned his miserable life after his downfall. It was just that she now treated Zhang Han like an idol and did not choose to talk about the period of Zhang Han's downfall. After Zhang Li heard this, she rolled her eyes. As for Zhao Feng, he shook his head and laughed. Meng Meng's aunt in front of him, had directly called him a little brother, but she was not that old yet. Zhao Feng, on the other hand, did not have any other thoughts, as he was already used to that people treating him like an ordinary person in this restaurant. However, Zif's last few words made Zhao Feng suddenly understand and say, so the boss is one of the four young masters of Shangjing. But with the boss's power, no one would dare to provoke him. What a joke. With the boss's skill, even he, who was in the top 3 of the special forces fighting strength, had been defeated in one move. But Zhang Li's next sentence, instead, gave Zhao Feng goosebumps. My brother isn't that great either. Zhang Li pursed her lips and laughed, then said, back then, my brother fought with Shangjing's #1 young master, Liu Danan, and in the end, he was injured. After that, my brother even brought 5 bodyguards with him. Puff. Cough, cough, cough. Zhao Feng almost failed to catch his breath and coughed a few times. After calming himself down, Zhao Feng muttered with a somewhat weak voice, crouching tigers and hidden dragons, Shangjing is a city that owns undiscovered talents. Zhang Han's impressiveness already made Zhao Feng feel like he was a primary school student in front of him. However, right now, he was hearing about someone even stronger than the boss. How could this not shock Zhao Feng? The current Zhang Han was a monster who had cultivated for 500 years. Although it was just the chi refining stage, it was not something that ordinary people could compare with. These words also caused Zhao Feng to misunderstand profoundly. Just by thinking about it, he felt that it was terrifying, even stronger than the boss. Wouldn't that mean he had to go to heaven? After hearing this news, Zhao Feng did not want to ask any further. As they chatted, Zhang Han carried the little princess and walked down. Behind him was the elegant Xian. Because she was going to the Mount New Moon, Xian combed her hair and tied up her hair with a braid. Zhao Feng was stunned when he saw Xian. He slightly frowned. He felt that Xian was extremely familiar, as if he could easily say her name. But because he was so muddle-headed right now, he couldn't say it out. This feeling was somewhat uncomfortable. Suddenly, Zhao Feng's mind lit up. He turned and looked at the 2 photos of Xian that were newly changed on the wall. His eyes slowly opened wide, and shouted, Xian, this is the landlady Xian. What's so surprising about that? Zhang Li glanced at Zhao Feng and said, yes, yes, yes. Zhao Feng reacted and shook his head with a wry smile. Why did his mind become so weak after meeting Zhang Han? Where did Zhao Feng, who was able to maintain his calm despite being pressured by Tai Shan in the past? So he put down the cloth in his hand, walked to the front, smiled at Zhang Han, then looked at Xian and said, "Hello landlord, I never thought that Miss Xian was the landlord here." "Hello." Xian gently nodded her head. "MHMPH. Meng Meng already said that my mom is very beautiful," Meng Meng said while pouting in Zhang Han's embrace. "Ha ha ha." Zhao Feng laughed and said, "That's right, what Meng Meng said was the truth. Your mother is super beautiful, and Meng Meng is also super beautiful. He he he. Meng Meng is also super pretty, just like Mama." Meng Meng smiled happily. After greeting, Zhang Han carried Meng Meng and walked out. Xian followed behind like a little wife. In her hand was a bag containing the remote control aircraft that Meng Meng had prepared, as well as a few items that Xian had developed, such as a parasol, a hat, cloth, etc. There was an old saying, "There can't be a woman in the house." Zhang Han had never thought about things like hats and umbrellas. Although the temperature and humidity in Mount New Moon were the most comfortable, it would still affect the whiteness of one's skin exposed to sunlight for too long. "Oh, boss, the fish seedlings and other things will be here soon. Should I go and bring them directly to the Mount New Moon later?" Zhao Feng saw that Zhang Han was about to leave the dining hall, so he quickly said this. "All right." Zhang Han only left a one-word reply, then pushed the door and went. Besides the panda car, Xian carried Meng Meng in her arms. Zhang Li and Zif looked at each other, finding curiosity in each other's eyes towards the Mount New Moon. They wanted to go as well, but they felt that there were some electric light bulbs. After discussing for a while in the morning, they decided to give up on the electric light bulbs. "When are you going to the Mount New Moon?" Zhang Li looked at Zhao Feng and asked. "About an hour later." "Then we'll go together," Zif said with a smile. "But..." Zhang Li suddenly hesitated and said, "We are all going." "Who is looking at the dining hall?" "This." Zif was slightly stunned. She did not expect this question. "I'll call someone over to look at the restaurant later." Zhao Feng shook his head and laughed, efficiently resolving the problem. Not long after, Zhang Li's Maserati GT was driven over by the technical master. After getting the keys and procedures ready, the car belonged to Zhang Li, and half an hour later, two of Zhao Feng's subordinates arrived at the dining hall. These two people were the subordinates of Zhao Feng's faction. Although the leader of Yong society was Tang Zhan, the few generals under Tang Zhan all had their faction, and each of them had their loyal subordinates. Zhao Feng had the least number of subordinates, but the people inside were all relatively average, just a little wild. "Brother Feng, we're here." The two casually greeted each other after entering the room. Seeing this, Zhang Li and Zif looked at Zhao Feng strangely. Zif only felt that Zhao Feng was not an ordinary person, but Zhang Li had rather high standards. Looking at this scene, Zif already had a faint feeling that he had some connections with the underground powers. However, the two of them did not say anything. Zhang Li drove the new Maserati to bring Zuf to the carriage to pick up the fish seedlings. Afterward, they headed to Mount New Moon. On the other side, when Zhang Han drove the car to the foot of Mount New Moon, he parked the car, and the family of three walked up the mountain. Just then, Xian and Meng Meng held hands and led the way. While the bag went straight to Zhang Han's hands, he casually followed behind. "Little Black, where are you? Meng Meng is here to play with you." Passing through the forest, Meng Meng could not wait any longer and called out. A soft voice resounded within the territory. "Ow, ow, ow." From the back of the mountain came a small, cheerful cry of Little Black. The moment the cry fell, one could see Little Black running over quickly from underneath the thunder yang tree at the top of the mountain. Its speed was extremely fast, and the fur that matched black and gold fluttered in the wind, giving it an imposing air. "I'm coming." Meng Meng also happily ran over, taking small steps. Little Black arrived very quickly, and when Meng Meng saw that they were very close, she was a little too anxious. She didn't manage to hit Little Black with her little foot and tripped over it, but in the end, splash! Meng Meng fell forward onto the ground. Because it was all grass, even if she landed on the ground, it would not hurt. Meng Meng felt the grass beneath her and stretched out her soft and tender little palm. She dubiously patted the grass, and saw Little Black running towards her with her clear and large eyes, and said in a baby voice, "That's not right, it's not, ugh, it's not Little Black's stomach." After Meng Meng finished speaking, she crawled up. At this time, Little Black was already in front of her, so Meng Meng pounced forward with her mouth pouting. Oh woo! Little Black's body hastily flipped, its stomach moving upwards, and steadily caught Meng Meng. Meng Meng was satisfied with this. She smilingly patted its stomach, stood up, and ran to the top of the mountain with Little Black. Seeing Meng Meng's appearance, Xian smiled and shook her head, then looked around at her surroundings. Her gaze was filled with amazement. "The scenery here is great. I didn't even see clearly last night." Zhang Han stood beside Xian, looked around, and said softly, "This place will be even more beautiful in the future." Chapter 92 Imagining the Future. Xian was slightly startled. "Will it be even more beautiful in the future? What do you mean?" "It means that in the future, not only will this place be beautiful, my relationship with Meng Meng and him will also get better and better." "Is he ready to woo me?" Sometimes, Xian's brain was still quite big. When facing Zhang Han, she couldn't keep the calmness in her heart, and would always let her imagination run wild because of his words. Thinking about that, Xian's gaze suddenly landed on that small ocean of flowers. "Huh?" Xian let out a light cry, and walked over with large strides. As she neared, the fragrance in the air turned into the fragrance of flowers, causing Xian to unconsciously take a few deep breaths. As she got closer and closer, Xian's eyes became larger and larger, and by the time she got near, her mouth had already opened slightly in shock. Fortunately, she quickly reacted and used her right hand to cover her red lips. Her beautiful eyes glanced at Zhang Han, and could see the deep shock in her eyes. "Oh my god, Zhang Han, are these all real flowers?" Xian asked in shock. Could it be fake flowers? Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he replied. "Is this an orchid? So beautiful. The colors are so bright, and there are even different colors," Xian said as she looked at the small patch of orchid in front of her. "Yes, these are the varieties of orchids." "What is this flower?" Xian pointed to a flower on her right and asked. The flower had 6 petals that were like willow leaves, slender and beautiful. The petals intersected with each other and were extremely beautiful. "This is hyacinth." "What flower is this? So beautiful." Xian walked a few steps forward, and asked when she saw another type of flower. The flowers in this area were white and yellow, with 5 petals that looked like a net inside an electric fan. "This is an egg flower." "What is this?" "This is." Zhang Han explained the situation to Xian as if he were a flower master. "Wow, what beautiful roses." When Xian saw the rose at the front, her eyes lit up and she quickly walked over. As the symbol of love and romance, roses were deeply loved by women. Xian was no exception. There are so many colors: red roses, white roses, blue roses, purple roses, pink roses, champagne roses, and black roses. So many, so beautiful, Xian said in pleasant surprise. Zhang Han smiled when he saw her expression. Originally, there was only one type of red rose on the Mount New Moon, but when the territory was being remodeled, Zhang Han intentionally copied some of the roses and adjusted their color. To the Thunder Yang tree, adjusting the color of the roses was naturally an easy task. "So beautiful, I'm afraid even the Juliet rose of England is just like this." "These are the most beautiful rose I've ever seen." Xian shook her head and lamented. Her palm gently reached out, wanting to stroke the flower petals, but she was reluctant to do so. She only touched it once in a while, then put her head closer, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath in front of the flower petals. At this moment, the flowers were beautiful, and Xian was even more beautiful. "Juliet Rose?" Zhang Han was startled for a moment, and then he recalled Juliet Rose's information. Juliet Roses had a total of 15 years of flower life, 15 years of flower life, and were extremely rare and precious. They were worth £3 million. Zhang Han had read about Juliet roses before, so he knew their shape. After hearing about it, Zhang Han felt that it was possible for him when he changed his territory at that time. After all, those flowers were of the highest quality, but Zhang Han smiled as he shook his head. The roses in Mount New Moon are better than the roses in Juliet. The Mount New Moon's roses were already the best in the world, but in terms of shape, Juliet, who had more petals, had its unique beauty. After all, the 30 million prices wasn't paid in vain. The roses are beautiful. Xian bit her lips as her beautiful eyes swept Zhang Han. Her long eyelashes lightly trembled as she faintly said, "If it were a gift for a girl, it would definitely be pleasing to the eye." There was always a trace of bitterness in her words. With such a good rose, why wouldn't he give it to her? Could it be that he didn't take her seriously, or did he intend to give it to her at the right? Just as this thought rose in her mind, Zhang Han was splashed with cold water in front of her. He laughed lightly and said, "No one wanted to take it as a gift. Someone didn't pay attention to these flowers." Xian's expression froze as she stared at Zhang Han, stunned. Zhang Han was baffled and a little scared at the same time, but he faintly felt that there was something wrong with the words just now. Just as Xian wanted to say something, Meng, who was already under the thunder yang tree, suddenly waved her small arm and shouted, "Ah, Papa, Mama, quickly come over, you guys are really slow. Meng has been waiting for a long time." In response to Meng's call, Xian snorted lightly and turned to walk towards Meng. Zhang Han shook his head and laughed as he followed along. Walking under the thunder yang tree, Xian also saw the scene at the back of the mountain and could not help but exclaim, "Zhang Han, you have raised so many animals and pets. There is quite a lot of crop growing." Ugh. This was all given to Meng by Papa. The little princess pouted and said Meng was a small child, but she knew that Zhang Han had specially made these things for her. She also knew that if it were not for Meng, there wouldn't be such a beautiful place. After Xian heard this, she laughed as she rubbed Meng's little head. At the same time, she couldn't help but feel a little jealous. That guy did so many things for Meng, but didn't even do anything to her, or even plan to give her such beautiful flowers. What did he mean by this? Is her that unimportant in his eyes? Thinking about it, Xian couldn't help but find it funny. She never thought that one day she would also be jealous of her own daughter. But that guy was too boring. It was all his fault. At this time, he laughed heartily and said, "This place has only just started to take shape. Look at the crops at the back. There's an orchard. When the fruit trees are planted a little, the fish pond there will have some fish seedlings placed today, and in front of this tree, this piece of land will be used to build a few villas in the future." The moment he said that shocked Xian. She was a little surprised. Her beautiful eyes sparkled as she looked at Zhang Han. "From what you said, I'm looking forward to what happens here, but I'm not sure if you can get it out. It sounds like a huge project. And this is the official land. You've only been renting here for a year, and the construction has been going on for over a year." While talking, a trace of doubt appeared in Xian's eyes. In this place where every inch of land was worth money, if Zhang Han wanted to achieve his goals, how much money would he have to spend? Furthermore, the authorities might not even bid for this land. If he was not granted the right to exploit it, how could he build it? Xian thought. But what she did not know was that after the first round of modifications in the Mount New Moon, it had changed a lot. If the people from the New Moon Base Bureau of Civil Affairs came over to check, they would definitely be shocked. Under normal circumstances, people from the Bureau of Lands would come over to investigate around 3 months. But Zhang Han had let the head Wang Qishan down, as he had always remembered to take care of the Mount New Moon. However, Zhang Han did not care about him at all. Using force to block the water, there was nothing that could not be solved. At this moment, Zhang Han was facing Xian's words with a slight smile, and his voice revealed his confidence. "The things that I have said can be done in at most 3 years, and I might even be able to do them a little earlier. Within 5 years, the Thunder Yang tree could have those 3 changes to the territory, and during the second transformation, all of the projects that Zhang Han had mentioned could be completed. One must know, the second transformation was many times more energy than the first one. It was not as simple as adding 1 to 2, but after the third transformation, the Mount New Moon would become a true treasure trove. Is that so? Xian curled her lips, her beautiful eyes sparkling as she looked at Zhang Han, and said, "Then I'll be waiting for you to fulfill what you have said." These words made Xian feel as if she was waiting for him, as if she was looking forward to seeing him. She didn't know why, but when she talked to Zhang Han, she was always very casual, and after some consideration, it caused her to feel that she was doing something to him. Xian's eyes flickered as she looked at him. In her heart, she also felt that the longer she spent in contact with Zhang Han, the more casual she seemed to be. Could this be the feeling of home? "Papa, Mama, come and play." Meng Meng and Xiaohai ran to the area where the pets were. Seeing the arrival of the little master, this group of sons of bitches immediately became lively. Even the aloof and cold pine lion and the husky who had already let go were circling Meng Meng. During this time, they also learned of a truth. If you want to be a good man, you have to flatter the little master. Don't you see how Big Brother does all this? It was just that Big Brother did not have a good attitude towards them. He would always grit his teeth and just casually throw his comrades out to play as a ball when he had nothing to do with them. It was truly full of malice. But Big Brother was really different from his young master. Looking at his slovenly appearance, he seemed like a eunuch praising the emperor. Damn it. The chance to sneak away was taken away by him. As a result, all the little dogs also became smarter. When they saw Meng Meng coming over, they became all well-behaved, which made Meng Meng a little flustered. "Zhang Han, there are a lot of germs on dogs. Do you usually let Meng Meng play with them like this?" Xian raised her eyebrows, as she spoke with a questioning tone. "It's fine." Zhang Han casually replied, "They don't have those bacteria on them, so don't worry about them. Also, I'm giving them some of the water you guys drank today, so there's no need to worry." Chapter 93, Best Assist. Is that really possible? Xian said hesitantly. Last time, when Zhang Han said this, she did not say anything because Little Black did indeed look different from the masses. But to have 30 or so of them in one go, this seemed to be a little too much. "Why would I lie to you?" Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and looked at Xian. "I didn't lie to you. If you're really worried, take some dog fur to test it out. Okay, Humphrey." Xian rolled her eyes at Zhang Han, and said, "You're so good at deceiving people, who knows if your words are true or not?" With that, Xian ran back to Meng Meng with a brisk pace, and two girls and the dogs started running and jumping around, playing with each other. Zhang Han accompanied them at the side. At this moment, his heart felt warm watching them play on the lawn. "Zhang Han, give me the bag." After playing for a while, Xian turned her head to look at Zhang Han as she reached out her hand and said. Zhang Han handed the bag over, and Xian took out a round cushion that had a diameter of 2 meters from the bag, placed it on the grass, and waved hand towards Meng Meng. "Meng Meng, come sit down and rest for a while." Meng Meng is not tired. Meng Meng's face was covered in sweat. The little princess was busy riding Little Black to battle on the battlefield. She did not even turn her head to look at Xian as she replied him. "No, Meng Meng, come over here quickly, you're already sweating. I'll help you wipe your sweat first," Xian said again. Meng Meng was still very obedient. After hearing that, she patted Little Black's body and said in a baby voice, "Woo, let's go, Little Black, to join Mama." A woo-oo-oo, because Little Black was afraid that Meng Meng would fall off her body. It carefully turned its body and slowly walked towards Xian. Puff. Seeing that, Xian could not help but laugh. She looked at Zhang Han and said, "Where did you get such a magical dog? So amazing, it understands human nature." "Unhumph, Little Black is that Earth Gold Emperor dog." Meng Meng snorted. She thought for a long time, but still could not find out Little Black's full name. Seeing that, Zhang Han laughed, and said, "Didn't I tell you last time, it is an ironclad golden emperor dog. Its name is Little Black." "That's right, That's right. It's an iron bag, an emperor dog. Little Black is really amazing. Meng Meng rode Little Black to the front. Little Black slowly laid her body on the ground. Meng Meng slid down from the side and happily ran to Xian. Meng Meng, sit down and rest for a while. Xian patted the mat beneath her. Meng Meng walked over, sat down on her butt, and imitated Xian's actions, patting the mat a few times, and said, "Papa, sit down and rest for a while." Seeing that, Zhang Han laughed and shook his head, then sat on the right side of Meng Meng. "Look at how you're playing. You're already acting like a little crazy girl." Xian took out a tissue paper and wiped the perspiration off Meng Meng's forehead, then took out two hats. One was Xian's usual pink cap, and the other was adorable-looking pink cap. "Come, Meng Meng, put on your hat, this way you won't get sunburnt." Xian then handed the hat over. "Unhumph, no, Ma. Just put on the hat and Meng Meng's hair will be messed up." The little princess still liked to be smug, so she blinked her clear and large eyes as she said seriously. She seemed to have forgotten that Zhang Han didn't usually tidy up her hair. "A ponytail and a hat are not messy." "Look, Mama takes off the hat, it's not messy, is it? Be good and put on your hat." Xian personally demonstrated it, and when Meng Meng saw that Mama's hair was not messed up, she took the hat and put it on. Not everyone would be able to wear a hat. There were some who couldn't look good wearing it, but for a head of moderate size like Meng Meng and Xian, it could be said that they could handle more than 90% of hats. "Mama, is it nice for Meng Meng to wear this hat?" Meng Meng asked with a face full of anticipation. "Good, very good," Xian said with a smile. "Papa, is the hat nice?" Meng Meng chuckled as she looked at Zhang Han. "Of course, Meng Meng is the world's most beautiful little princess, even when she wears a hat." Zhang Han replied with a smile. The mama is super beautiful, the papa is also super handsome, and Meng Meng is also super beautiful." Meng Meng blinked her large eyes. Her left hand grabbed onto Xian's right palm, while her right hand grabbed onto Zhang Han's left palm. As if Xian knew what was going to happen in the next moment, her heart inexplicably tightened, but she allowed Meng Meng to hold her hand. Meng Meng's two small hands grew closer and closer. Gradually, four palms came together, and the moment Xian's beautiful palm and Zhang Han's palm came into contact, Xian felt like she was struck by lightning. Not only was she nervous, even her palm felt a little numb. Papa, hold on to Mama's hand." Seeing that their hands were not holding on to anything, Meng Meng asked anxiously. Zhang Han laughed softly and grasped Xian's white and tender hands in his own. At this time, Xian's body felt a bit numb. It was a kind of nervousness, a kind of unfamiliar feeling, also a kind of complicated feeling. As for Meng Meng, the best assistant, she happily looked at the two big palms, her small arms wrapped around their arms, and said in a blissful tone, "Papa and Mama are accompanying Meng Meng." Meng Meng is so happy. As she spoke, Meng Meng put her head on the palm of the two of them. The little guy had always been looking forward to this scene. Papa, Mama and Meng Meng, being together would be the happiest thing. Xian's heart trembled. When she looked at Zhang Han, she realized that Zhang Han was also looking at her. At this moment, as the two of them looked at each other, the world seemed to have come to a standstill. She saw a hint of warmth and a hint of expectation and shyness in his eyes. After they had looked at each other for 10 seconds, Xian quickly lowered her head. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, revealing that she was not calm at all. There was something special in Zhang Han's heart as well. Looking at the blissful Meng Meng, his heart started to soften. "Actually, it's good to continue like this," Zhang Han murmured in his heart. This was the first time such a thought truly occurred to him. The two of them held hands for around 2 minutes. Meng Meng was waving her little arms and humming a song. Xian lowered her head in silence. Zhang Han looked at the two of them with a gentle gaze, until Zhang Han felt the sweat on his palms and knew if she was hot or nervous. Thus he let go of Xian's hand. He smiled and rubbed Meng Meng's head, saying, "Meng Meng, Daddy is going to do something. you and Mommy are going to play here. Ugh. MHMPH, alright. Be quick, Papa. Meng felt that her best support wouldn't hold hands for long, so she replied as S. He looked at Zhang Han with her big eyes and waved her small palm. Alright. Zhang Han laughed heartily. After getting up, he first set up a large parasol for them, and then he walked towards the Thunder Yang tree at the peak of the mountain in large strides. After Zhang Han left, Xian took a deep breath, feeling that her heartbeat was still speeding up. Just holding hands is all, Xian, you're so shameless. What's wrong with me? Why did it feel like lightning to hold hands with him? Back then, both he and I. If not, Meng would not have appeared. It was just that at that time, the two of them were in a daze and had subconsciously completed everything together. The feelings they had at that time were still unclear, so she and Zhang Han still had a strange feeling. As everyone knew, it was unforgettable when a couple held hands, hugged, kissed and for the first time. It was an unforgettable experience, and the psychological and physical reactions were even more intense. For example, when the palm touched the body, it would give off a feeling of numbness. People usually called this infatuation period. Even though the two of them had Meng, they were not truly lovers. Some reactions were normal. And as for Zhang Han, of course there wasn't any reaction. At this moment, he walked to the bottom of the Thunder Yang tree, and looked at Xian and Meng who were seated far away in the pet area. He then looked at his own palm, slightly shook his head. Somewhat regretfully, Xian's white and tender hands were very soft and comfortable. Let's get down to business. Zhang Han laughed and shook his head. He then took out the necklace from his pocket. In the future. After Zhang Han glanced at the necklace, he turned to Xian and softly murmured, I will give you the best necklace in all the heavens. Zhang Han and Xian both held the mindset of freely developing. Whether the two would succeed in the future was still unknown, but in Zhang Han's eyes, it was something that was almost natural for the two of them to succeed. Unknowingly, Zhang Han had already accepted Xian, and seeing Xian's attitude, she also started to accept Zhang Han. This was more or less what Xian and Zhang Han had in mind. Zhang Han retracted his gaze, and used some strength in his hand that was holding the necklace, causing the necklace's chain to break and fall onto the ground. Zhang Han's hand that was holding the heart-shaped stone suddenly opened up and with a bang, he pressed it onto the Thunder Yang tree. Obsidian crystal. Zhang Han squinted his eyes. The spirit energy in his body was constantly gathering in his palms, pulling the energy from the obsidian crystal. Buzz! An extremely faint muffled sound was emitted and an invisible ripple surrounded the Thunder Yang tree. Then, it was absorbed by the Thunder Yang tree. Strands of the obsidian crystal's energy flowed to the Thunder Yang tree. 5 minutes later, the obsidian crystal's energy completely disappeared, and the heart-shaped stone let out a crisp sound, transforming into powder that floated along with the light breeze. And all the energy that came from the obsidian crystal was overflowing with the Thunder Yang tree. Refine. Abruptly, Zhang Han's gaze concentrated as the spirit energy pulled the crystal energy. It continuously gathered on the jade fire dew and began to refine it. The jade fire dew with impurities intersected with white and green. Under the invasion of the energy crystal, the green impurities gradually became lighter, and finally dissipated, leaving behind the milky white jade fire dew without impurities. This jade fire dew already belonged to the second stage spirit treasure. Refining the jade fire dew cost 2/3 of the crystal's energy, and the remaining third was temporarily stored in the Thunder Yang tree. Chapter 94, Fish Seedling. In the underground lake, there were only 3 liters of pure Yang energy left. Water. Under Zhang Han's willpower, the Thunder Yang tree controlled all of the pure Yang water. The water was sucked into the tree trunk from the tree root and the energy from the crystal was absorbed by the Thunder Yang tree. A moment later, in the cave pool, pure Yang water flowed out from the strands of Thunder Yang tree. 1 liter, 2 liters, 3 liters. In just 5 seconds, the amount of pure Yang water reached 3 liters, similar to when it had just absorbed. However, Pure yang water was still flowing through the roots. 4 liters, 5 liters, 10 liters, 20 liters. It was only when the water reached 30 liters that it stopped completely. 30 liters. The amount of pure yang water finally increased a bit. I can finally do a little more. Zhang Han smiled and shook his head, placing his hand on the thunder yang tree and guiding it to absorb the 10 liters of pure yang water, disintegrating it into a wave of energy, and spreading it out along the thunder yang tree's roots, nourishing the soil and water in the territory. At this time, the energy of an obsidian crystal would also come to an end. Just as Zhang Han retracted his palm, Little Black, who was strolling in the pet area, suddenly perked its ears and immediately followed with a grin. Woof, woof, woof. Little Black called out twice in the direction of the front mountain, indicating that someone was coming up. The person who came over at this time was most likely Zhao Feng and the others who had come to send them fish seedlings. Zhang Han's gaze looked down towards the forest. 20 seconds later, Zhao Feng's figure appeared on the lawn of the territory first. Following behind him were Zhang Li and Zif, followed by 8 or 9 people who came to deliver the fish seedlings one after another. Oh woo! The chance to act cool had come. Little Black scuttled over with a whoosh sound. Sigh, what a beautiful place. Damn. It's so beautiful. It's simply a paradise on earth. This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful place. Phew. The air, the fresh air, it feels great. Everyone was sighing with emotion. This was the first time that people had come, and they were all changing into the appearance of Grandma Liu entering the Grand View Garden. Yeah. Such a big dog. When Zhang Li saw Little Black coming, she was shocked and exclaimed in shock. After Zif saw this, her face became even more nervous, her body sticking closely to Xian, while the others became even more nervous. If it were a pet dog with golden fur, they wouldn't be afraid, but seeing such a big and ferocious-looking dog, they felt a chill run down their spines. It's okay. It doesn't bite. Zhao Feng waved his hand and said to everyone. As he spoke, Little Black also ran up to him. Just as he finished speaking, Little Black lit up its fangs at Zhao Feng, and gave a low growl, as if its father was going to do something to him. This scene caused everyone's hearts to tighten, and also caused Zhao Feng's expression to freeze. Just as he said that he was fine, Little Black was just acting arrogantly, and had slapped him in the face. Does it really not bite? Zhang Li asked somewhat nervously. This. Zhao Feng did not know how to answer. Bite, not bite? That also depended on the situation. With Zhang Han here, it could be sure that it would not bite anyone, but at the moment, Zhao Feng did not know either, especially that fellow, who had the expression of wanting to bite him alone. Ooh. Little Black continued to roar, and moved closer to Zhao Feng step by step, looking at the tiger-like sharp teeth in its mouth. It really made people's hearts shiver. All right, Little Black, come back, Zhang Han said from far away under the thunder yang tree. His voice was not loud, and was so loud that Zhao Feng and the rest could not hear him clearly, but Little Black's hearing was much stronger than before, so it could clearly hear Zhang Han's shouts. Thus, Little Black growled at Zhao Feng and the rest with its final growl, turned its head and ran towards Zhang Han. Phew. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Brother Feng, what kind of dog is this? It feels so fierce, just like a tiger. One of Zhao Feng's lackeys asked with lingering fear in his heart. Zhang Li, Zif and the rest were all looking at Zhao Feng. Under the gazes of several people, the corners of Zhao Feng's mouth twitched, and in the end, he said weakly, this dog, even if a tiger comes, it might not be its match. So among the people that came today, without me leading, you absolutely should not come up without yourself, because if the boss is not here, this dog will bite you to death. Huh? Zhao Feng would never make such a joke. If he said that this dog could bite a person to death, then it definitely had the strength to do so. Is this dog that powerful? Zhang Li asked with some curiosity. Of course, even if I wanted to deal with it, I would have to expend some effort. Zhao Feng laughed bitterly and shook his head. According to Zhang Han, he was not a match for Little Black with his bare hands, but he was still a man, and would subconsciously take out a weapon no matter what. Zhao Feng was no exception. If he were given a blade, defeating Little Black would only be a matter of time. Let's go up. Zhao Feng took the lead and walked towards the top of the mountain. The others followed closely behind, and couldn't help but exclaim, "This grass is so soft, look at backwards, after you step on it you stand up again. It's so magical, and the tree in front, why is it so big, so tall, like a big mushroom? No, it's like the world tree in a magic game, so cool." As Grandma Liu entered the large garden, naturally, she had to let out a sigh of relief everywhere. As for Zhang Li and Zif, the two girls, their gazes also drifted towards the sea of flowers. "Ah, Zhang Li, look over there. FCK, is that for real? Wow, what beautiful flowers. Quickly go and take a look." The two of them quickly ran over. They were much wilder than Xian, and their shouts would occasionally come from there. "Damn, it's a real flower. So beautiful. Oh my god, this is simply the most perfect thing I've ever seen." The two of them shook their heads and exclaimed in admiration, looking at Little Red Heart. And even Zhang Han and the others did not notice that they were already walking towards the back of the mountain. Arriving at the back of the mountain, Zhao Feng saw the mother and daughter sitting in the pet area, and was startled. He squinted his eyes, because he was too far away to see Xian's appearance, but he could see that the lady was an absolute beauty. Therefore, Zhao Feng could not help but be curious in his heart. He looked at Zhang Han and asked, "Boss, the one sitting over there is our landlady?" "Yes." Zhang Han nodded. "It looks a bit familiar." Zhao Feng asked doubtfully. Zhang Han shook his head and did not say anything else. Seeing that, Zhao Feng suppressed his curiosity and did not ask further. When the group of people arrived at the pond, the surroundings of the pond was separated by hollies. Every few meters, there would be a few hollies that were around half a meter tall, like a doorstep. The professional who was called by Zhao Feng lifted his leg and wanted to walk over, intending to get some water from the pond to dry. He had also heard from Zhao Feng that this water could breed salted water fish and freshwater fish at the same time, so he naturally did not believe it. Just as his leg was about to step over, Zhang Han opened his mouth. "Wait. The water is more than 4 meters deep." This pond was like a swimming pool to Zhang Han. He did not want the beach or the lake to become deeper and deeper. "Huh?" The professional was slightly surprised, but he quickly retracted his leg. After thinking for a while, he called the person beside him and pulled his right hand. At the same time, his left hand held an empty water bottle and filled the pond with an empty bottle of water. He looked at the sun for a few seconds, then asked his men to get a microscope and put some water on his glasses. He then poured some water into his palm, licked it a few times, and personally tasted the quality of the water. "Huh?" The man's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the water in the bottle with surprise. He hesitated for a moment before putting the bottle in his mouth and gulping down the water. He wanted to taste it again, but he couldn't stop after the first sip. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. Even the people around him looked at him blankly. "What are you doing? How did he get drunk just like that?" Under the gaze of the crowd, the professional finished drinking all the water in the bottle in one gulp. "Ah!" He shook his head as he thought about it. Awesome. It had been a long time since he drank such delicious water. "This is great. Come on, hold me. I'll have another bottle." At this point, he completely forgot about his work and tasks, only to take a few sips of water here. With the help of his companions, he took another bottle and gulped it down. "Ha ha ha, this is great. It's really delicious, much better than the deep well water in my hometown. This water is too awesome." He gave the crowd a feeling as if he had drunk some kind of 100-year-old wine. "It's really delicious. Let me have a taste too," his companion asked curiously. "Then wait a moment. I can still drink half a bottle. Come, hold me." Professionals also want to drink half a bottle. Little did he know, that at this time, Zhao Feng already had an awkward expression on his face. He felt as if a few black lines were floating on his forehead, and when he saw that the professional he found was drinking water, he couldn't help but remind him, cough cough. Can you start working? Zhao Feng opened his mouth, and the professional with glasses moved. He looked at Zhao Feng and retracted his body, then looked at Zhang Han with an embarrassed expression. Sorry, boss. The water here is too delicious, I couldn't hold it back. It doesn't matter. If you want to drink it, then drink it. Zhang Han casually waved his hand. Hee, all right, thank you, boss. The professional laughed and refilled another bottle of water. He drank half of the bottle and felt his stomach swell. Then he gave the bottle to his companions. After they tasted the water, they all rushed to eat until they were full. The professional walked in front of Zhang Han and changed his tone to a serious working tone, and said, "This is great, but I don't think it's possible to raise saltwater fish. So I decided on my own. And all I got were freshwater fish seedlings because the water in the boss pond is just over an acre wide. They could not raised." Chapter 95, Wet Seduction. Oh, that's fine too. Zhang Han nodded. Seeing that his employer didn't mind, the professional let out a sigh of relief, then smiled and said, "Boss's pond looks like it's been made not long ago. I really don't know where I got such high-quality water. I almost can't see this water source in the market, and there aren't any microbes in the water. If that's the case, I'll need you to feed me some fish food at regular intervals. I've prepared some fish food at the bottom of the lake." Zhang Han nodded his head. With regards to food, there was meat and grass. There was no need for Zhang Han to worry. "That won't do." The professional's expression changed slightly as he said, "Feeding fish is something to be learned. It cannot be too much. After a fish is satiated, it will speed up its breathing and increase its oxygen demand to help it digest. If the body is hypoxic, then the fish that is satiated will definitely die, and if you feed the fish, you have to choose carefully. Some inferior fodder can't be fed too much, and some inferior fodder will expand when it encounters water. When it entering into the stomach of the fish, it eats too much will cause the organs of the fish to burst." "Yes." Zhang Han replied indifferently. The rules that the bespectacled man spoke of were all reasonable, but this was the Mount New Moon, not something that could be judged by common sense. "Water hypoxia? Don't mean it. This is the spirit water. Should it died with enough food?" "Sorry. The fish ate the meat and grass." "That would never happen." Nothing could be concerned. Zhao Feng could see through Zhang Han's intention, so he looked at the man with glasses and said, "All right, let's begin." "Fine." The professional nodded and said to his companions, "Come on, get to work. Let's bathe the fish seedlings." After the fish entered the pond, it seemed to sense something and happily swam around in the pond. From time to time, it would jump out of the water, causing ripples to form on the surface of the water, filling the pond with life. After placing the fish and shrimp seedlings into the pond, Zhao Feng waved and let them leave. They begged to take a photo here. When they saw Zhang Han nodding his head in agreement, they were overjoyed. They took several pictures together and even wanted to take a picture at every corner, but a few minutes later, Little Black came over and lit its fangs at them, and they obediently went down the mountain. After they finished with the fish pond, Zhang Li and Zif slowly walked over from the mountain. "Brother." Zhang Li ran over and said excitedly, "Brother, those flowers in front are too beautiful. How do you raise it?" Yeah, brother-in-law, you're too awesome. I really have a lot of things to kowtow to you. I didn't expect brother-in-law to be able to create such a paradise. Heavens, this place is too beautiful." Zif's eyes widened, as she spoke with exaggerated expression. "If you like those flowers, pick some and go back to raise them." Zhang Han casually replied. When these words came out, Zif's eyes lit up, but Zhang Li shook her head continuously and said, "That won't do. We don't have time to take care of the flowers. If they were died, how sad would it be?" "That's true." Sigh. Everyone likes beautiful flowers. However, they are too beautiful and do not dare to raise one. Truly a bunch that have big balls. Zif's face turned bitter. Those beautiful flowers were something they did not dare to grow. They were afraid that they would not be able to raise them themselves, so they might as well leave them here. It would be better to come here to admire them when they had time. However, What they did not know was that as long as they had the spirit soil of the Mount New Moon, coupled with the nourishment from the spirit water, not only would they not die, but the flowers would bloom for a long time. Unless the spirit water were nourished, they would wither away. In the current market, technology was developed. In a certain country's flower company, they had developed a kind of beautiful woman and wild beast rose, which could blossom for more than 3 years without sunlight or water. If it were placed in a glass bottle, the price of this flower would be between 10,000 to 30,000, not to mention the flowers that were grown in the Mount New Moon. If there were no comparison, then there would be no harm, and if they were to compare the things on the market with those of the Mount New Moon, they would probably be depressed to the point of vomiting blood. Oh yeah, boss. Just when Zhao Feng was about to say something, Papa, quickly come over here. Zhang Han was there for a while, and she couldn't wait for him to go over to play, so she shouted with all her might. Hearing the little princess's call, Zhang Han immediately walked over, with an expression as if he was ignoring everyone else. The corners of his mouth slightly trembled, and with a face full of powerlessness, he followed Zhang Han over. Zhang Li and Zif, who were at the side, saw Zhao Feng and started to laugh. Hey, Papa, why are you so slow? Meng wants to use the remote control to fly. I can't wait any longer. Walking forward, Meng carried the remote control aircraft box and eagerly ran towards Zhang Han. The little princess insisted on asking Papa to open the box and get the remote control aircraft ready, not even allowing her mama to touch it. I am coming. Zhang Han walked a few steps forward and hugged Meng, then returned to the seat beside Ziyan and sat down. He opened the box and prepared to play with Meng on the plane. Elder sister Yan, brother-in-law is really amazing. To be able to create this place, my god, I really didn't dare to think of that before. Zif sat beside Ziyan and said with admiration, that's right, sister-in-law. I didn't even know that my brother had this ability. It seems like he became even stronger after being with you. Zhang Li laughed as she shook her head. At the same time, her heart felt a little emotional. She had never seen her brother like this, with such a sense of responsibility. Could this be the change after Meng? Zhang Li didn't know what she was thinking, but she knew that compared to the previous arrogant and domineering Zhang Han, she liked the current Zhang Han more. Zhang Li and Zif both sat on cushions, but Zhao Feng did not join in the fun. Instead, he greeted Ziyan with a light smile. Hello, lady boss. In the face of the few people's words, Ziyan merely nodded with a faint smile, and at the same time, glanced at Zif with a strange expression. The meaning seemed to be saying that it was fine for Zhao Feng to call her the lady boss, because he was an outsider after all. Zhang Li might call her sister-in-law, because she was Zhang Han's younger sister. From last night to now, the name brother-in-law has been mentioned more than 30 times by Zif, right? Towards this little traitor Zif, Ziyan could only reply with the whites of her eyes. Hee. Zif giggled. Seeing Ziyan's expression, she knew Ziyan did not really mind this form of address. In other words, she did not reject Zhang Han at all, and there might even be a possibility for her to like him. However, their words, on the other hand, attracted Meng's attention. The little princess turned her head and looked towards Zif, pouting her cute little mouth as she spoke. NHMPH, Papa specially made this for Meng, made it for Meng. After saying that, Meng looked at Zhang Li and continued, my Papa has always been powerful. In the end, Meng looked at Zhao Feng with her clear and bright eyes, and said, HMPH, you don't know how to speak. You should say, beautiful boss lady, my mum is the most beautiful. After Meng finished speaking, she turned around to look at Zhang Han, and said with an expression, Papa, is what Meng said right? Ha ha ha. Zhang Han laughed heartily. He then used his right hand to caress Meng's delicate little neck and laughed. Meng is exactly right. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Meng laughed very happily. Seeing Meng's cute appearance, Ziyan, Zif, Zhang Li and Zhao Feng could not help but laugh. All right, Meng, let's begin. Zhang Han placed the remote control plane in front of him and held the remote control handle, which looked like a game handle. Zhang Han gave Meng Meng a demonstration as he said, "Look at the button on the left. This is the airplane's lift button. The one on the right is the change in direction." Papa. Meng Meng knew about this a long time ago. Meng Meng wants to play. Meng Meng wants to play. Meng Meng had already played with the remote control plane before, so she knew how to control it. Seeing that, Zhang Han laughed, and pulled Meng Meng into his embrace, passing the remote control to Meng Meng, and the little princess started to play with the remote control in Zhang Han's embrace. What? High up, a little higher, HMPH, turn left, oh, turn right, Papa, the plane is about to fall. What do we do, Papa, quickly save me. Meng Meng was playing with it. She did not manage to control the plane well, causing it to fall from the side. Seeing that it was about to crash, Zhang Han quickly saved the situation, holding onto her small hand and steadily controlling the plane. This caused Meng Meng to burst into laughter. The things she had done in the past were not as happy as the ones she had in Papa's arms. After Zhao Feng, Zhang Li, and Zif chatted for a while, they looked at each other. They all felt that they should give their family a room to themselves. Bro, then we'll be going back first. Don't be late, we have to wait for you to go back to cook at noon. Yes. Zhang Han did not even turn his head as he responded with a grunt. Thus, Zhang Li and Zhang Li left reluctantly. On the other hand, Zhao Feng had come to the Mount New Moon a few times already. After they left, Zhang Han and Meng Meng continued to play. Beside them, Xian looked at the father and daughter with a slightly blurred gaze. At this moment, in the livestock area next door, Tai Lake black swine, cows, sheep, and ebony sheep were wandering in their areas. The ducklings and geese were playing by the water's edge, while the adult chickens were drinking water in groups of 3 or 5. Zhang Han unintentionally swept his gaze over. Suddenly, Zhang Han's gaze stopped at the adult chicken herd. After looking at it for 10 minutes, he found a problem. There were a total of 31 mature chicken, and on the day Xian returned, they ate 2 of them. It should be the last 29 chickens, but now, after Zhang Han observed for a while, there were only 27 chickens. What was going on? Zhang Han passed Meng Meng over to Xian, and after saying that, he walked over to investigate. As for Little Black, who was strolling by the side, when it saw Zhang Han walk over, its expression suddenly shrank back. With its tail held between its legs, it walked towards Meng Meng's side, step by step, as if it was a well-behaved baby. Generally, only when the dog thinks it is wrong will it behave in such a cautious and obedient manner. Zhang Han walked straight to the side of the chicken rack and glanced inside. There were no chickens laying eggs, and outside, there were only 27 chickens. There were indeed 2 chickens missing. Thus, Zhang Han looked at Little Black, and upon seeing its appearance, Zhang Han waved his hand, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Little Black walked over with its tail tucked between its legs. It looked like it was in the wrong as it approached with its tongue-tied face. Zhang Han smiled as he shook his head. You ate 2 chickens? To Zhang Han, eating a few chickens was not a big deal. After all, Little Black was one of them. But there were only a few chickens in Mount New Moon now. When Little Black heard this, it shook its head, indicating that it did not eat by itself. At the same time, it turned its gaze towards the dense jungle behind it. Oh, Zhang Han frowned and looked over. Could it be that someone else was eating the chicken? The sharpness in Zhang Han's body flowed through his nose, using his innate ability, treasure-sniffing nose. In the direction of the forest, Zhang Han felt a stench of blood. And there was the smell of fresh blood. Did someone just eat it? Or was there someone else there? Zhang Han walked towards the direction of the forest, with Little Black's guilty expression following closely behind him. But just as he reached the edge of the jungle, plop, the pond at the back suddenly began to emit a splashing sound. Zhang Han turned to look, only to see Meng Meng anxiously shouting out, "Mama, Ma! Did she fall into the water?" When his gaze returned to Meng Meng's side, Right when Zhang Han was about to step into the forest, the plane controlled by Meng Meng fell down once again. Mama, the plane is about to crash. Xian frantically tried to salvage the situation, but she was unable to salvage the plane that fell. The plane almost fell into the pond and hung itself on the holies on the inside. Xian walked over to prepare the remotely piloted aircraft. Her body leaned forward a bit, but she wasn't able to balance her body and fell into the water with a splash. She didn't expect the pool to be so deep. Originally, she could swim, but for a moment she was somewhat panicked. She kept slapping against the surface of the water with her hands. Seeing that, Zhang Han jumped in shock, and immediately retreated. He circulated the spirit energy in his body in both legs, and his entire body floated up, with a point at the tip of the blade. He moved forward 7 or 8 meters, and when he was near, Zhang Han's feet touched the water surface. It was like a dragonfly touching the water lightly. It did not raise any big waves as it advanced forward step by step. If Xian were to see this scene, she would definitely be shocked beyond belief. But now she couldn't care less. With a distance of around 200 meters, Zhang Han only used 10 seconds. When he was near, Zhang Han jumped into the water and dove into the water. Like a fish, he swam over quickly and caught Xian, and pulled her up. PFFT. Cough cough cough. Phew. Xian spat out a few mouthfuls of water, took a deep breath, and dragged by Zhang Han to the edge of the lake. Zhang Han held her hand the entire time, and went ashore first. Then, he pulled Xian up, and carried her in his arms. Mama, ma, woo woo. Mama, how are you? Meng Meng cried out anxiously at the side. Xian coughed a few times, took a few deep breaths, and smiled at Meng Meng. Mama is fine. Meng Meng won't cry, be good. After that, Zhang Han walked to the cushions while carrying Xian, but Meng Meng did not cry at all. There were still crystal clear tears hanging from the corners of her eyes. After placing Xian down lightly on the cushion, she had also recovered her strength and consoled Meng Meng for a while. During this time, Zhang Han sat beside her and watched quietly. After a while, Meng Meng became happy again. Xian laughed slightly as she rubbed Meng Meng's head, turned her head and looked at Zhang Han with a rebuking gaze, and said, "Why didn't you tell me that the water was so deep?" Little did she know that the moment she turned around, her beautiful figure was completely revealed in Zhang Han's field of vision. Xian was wearing a thin, white sports attire. After she was completely drenched, the pink-colored undergarment that she was wearing was completely revealed, revealing her voluptuous undergarments, her perky underclothes, and her figure that had angles and ravines. At this moment, it was as if she was covered by a thin layer of white gauze. This sort of temptation, which was faintly discernible, dazzled the eyes of others. Zhang Han's gaze uncontrollably swept up and down, and there was some astonishment in his eyes. At first, looking at Xian's figure, he felt that she was a bit thin. The upper part of her body would not be big, but he never expected that her body would be so well developed. Zhang Han was secretly praising them in his heart, as he looked at them openly. When Xian noticed his gaze, she looked down and realized that she had missed something, and her face flushed red. She glanced at Zhang Han with her beautiful eyes and scolded softly, "What are you looking at?" Chapter 96, Little Shyness. When Zhang Han saw Xian's rosy red face with her beautiful eyes flickering, he only felt a little tempted in his heart. "Papa, what are you looking at?" Meng Meng imitated Xian's tone, staring with her big eyes, pouting her small mouth as she spoke. Her small appearance was as cute as it could get. Seeing that, Zhang Han shook his head and chuckled. He looked at Xian and said, "Let's go back first. Your clothes are all wet. You must be uncomfortable." "Yes." Xian lightly tapped her forehead. Not only was she wet and uncomfortable, but the way Zhang Han looked at her also felt uncomfortable. "HMPH, this bastard is always bullying me, because I am Meng Meng's mother." Xian secretly snorted in her heart, but she did not reveal all of this on her face. It was enough to say that she did not treat Zhang Han as an outsider. Otherwise, Forget about such an expression. Zhang Han would not even see Xian's smiling face. After Xian got up, Zhang Han put away the parasol and cushion. It was only then that Meng Meng remembered her remotely piloted plane. She spoke a little anxiously. Papa. The plane crashed. We are going to save the plane. All right. Zhang Han just replied and was about to go get the plane. However, just as Zhang Han took a step forward, Little Black, who was by his side, bellowed and ran over. Its speed was very fast, and its four legs were moving up and down. It was helpless. It was the little steward of the territory. When Zhang Han realized that there were two fewer chickens, Little Black felt that it had stirred up some trouble, and now, it wanted to perform even better. Little Black's speed was extremely fast. After running for about 10 seconds, it arrived at the edge of the pond. With a leap, its entire body jumped up more than a meter, and it opened its mouth to bite down on the remote control aircraft that was hung on the holly. Plop. Little Black fell into the pond and then calmly swam up. It had a fawning expression on its face as it came over with the plane. Actually, Xian's falling into the water was somewhat related to Zhang Han. Normally, Little Black would look after the matters of the territory, and when Zhang Han called Little Black away, that would happen. If Little Black were here, it would definitely not have let Xian do anything dangerous. But if Xian did not fall into the water, Zhang Han would not be able to see her beautiful figure and her embarrassed expression. The Little Black is so powerful. Meng Meng took the remote-controlled aircraft, extended her hand and patted Little Black's head. Little Black happily circled around Meng Meng a few times. Seeing this, Zhang Han smiled and shook his head. He saw Little Black's gaze secretly sizing him up. It's just stealing 2 chickens. What's the big deal? Zhang Han never planned to punish Little Black in the first place. As a member of the same clan and also a housekeeper of the territory, the treatment of Little Black would naturally not be bad. After Meng Meng bid farewell to Little Black and the other dogs, she prepared to leave the mountain with Zhang Han and Xian. Arriving in front of the panda car, Zhang Han thought for a while, then took off his jacket, draped it over Xian's body, and said, "Wear it, don't catch a cold." Xian's expression paused for a moment, and lightly tapped her forehead. She sat in the back seat with Meng Meng, and only when Zhang Han was about to get on the car did he remember pure Yang water. He forgot about it. "I need to get something," Zhang Han said as he turned and walked towards the Mount New Moon. Xian looked at Zhang Han's back from the carriage and snorted. He even said not to catch a cold. In such a hot day, he obviously used his big clothes to cover her body. If he was afraid of her catching a cold, why did he not give her clothes earlier? Why did he have to go down the mountain? Although she thought this in her heart, Xian still felt comfortable. After all, from this small detail, she could tell that Zhang Han still cared about her, and that it would be a little awkward if she really went back like this. Zhang Han returned to the Thunder Yang tree and filled a small milk bucket with pure Yang water. Then he went down the mountain again and drove back to the restaurant. Originally, Zhang Han planned to play until around noon before returning. However, as Xian had fallen into the water, they were back more than an hour early. It was also because she had fallen into the water that they had to wait so long for lunch. Returning to the dining hall, Zhang Li was chatting with Zif. When they saw that Zhang Han and Xian were drenched from head to toe, they were surprised. "Oh, elder sister Yan, we only came back from the mountain for a short while. What did you and brother-in-law do? Are you playing with Mandarin duck game?" Zif said with an I'm shocked expression. "Stupid girl, are you talking nonsense? Let me sew your mouth shut." Xian glared fiercely at her. "NHMPH, that's not it, it's Mama. She wanted to help Meng Meng fall off the plane, and then Mama fell off into the water. Papa flew over quickly, and saved Mama." Meng Meng explained what happened as she pouted. She had seen Zhang Han flying on the water. Although Meng Meng did not understand how big and tall treading on water meant, but she felt that the papa was so cool back then. Zhang Han laughed as he rubbed Meng Meng's head. He did not mind letting his family see the scene of him becoming strong. As time passed by, they would realize more things. and Zhang Han would bring his family members along to cultivate in the future. There was a lot of truth in this saying that a man could ascend the path of the heavens. Furthermore, Zhang Han's first step on the surface of the water was not true treading on the water, it was only based on the premise that he could run a certain distance in the water with his current speed. With Zhang Han's current strength, he could only run for a few hundred meters on the water surface. To tread on the water surface, he would need to attain foundation stage that could emit spirit energy. Let's go to change clothes. After said that, Zhang Han and Xian headed to the second floor. At this time, Zhang Li also teased, "Brother, yesterday you said that you want to sleep on the sofa. But you said let's change clothes today. Hee. It seems like you and sister-in-law have a good relationship." Xian, who was walking in front, almost staggered. She did not turn back, her face slightly flushed, and quickly walked towards the second floor. "It's all your fault." After entering the bedroom, Xian rolled her eyes at Zhang Han in a bad mood. She didn't even realize how charming and moving her tone was. Zhang Han was baffled. "Why are you blaming me?" On the other hand, after Xian said that, she started rummaging through her clothes in the luggage, while Zhang Han took out a new set of casual clothes from his wardrobe, and went to the second bedroom to change clothes. When Zhang Han walked out, the main bedroom's door was still closed. Presumably, Xian was still changing her clothes, so Zhang Han directly went downstairs. In the master bedroom, Xian took off her wet clothes and placed them to the side. In reality, she was wearing a set of white undergarments, but even so, it revealed her perfect and graceful figure. "Which one are you wearing?" Looking at the clothes in front of him, Xian didn't know how to choose. Sometimes, people would always have difficulty choosing their clothes, and many women would go back and forth when they were carefully dressing up, making it easier for men to do so, because they don't have enough clothes. "Which one?" Xian looked at the pretty garment that Zhang Han bought for her with a somewhat hesitant expression. "He just gave them to me yesterday, and I'm already wearing them today." "Don't you think that's a little bad?" "Will he think too much? Would he think I like him?" "Like him? How is that possible?" "I won't wear it." Xian's gaze once again returned to the trunk, choosing again and again, but she still wasn't able to make a decision. Hence, her gaze once again couldn't help but drift towards the clothes, stretching her hand out, hesitantly muttering, "The clothes he chooses are pretty, and his eyesight is pretty good. So why don't I wear it?" "It's not because of him. Just wear this." In the end, Xian still wore the clothes, and her lower body matched up with a pair of super shorts. At this time, everyone downstairs was seated at the dining table. Zhang Han hugged Meng and interacted with her in his arms. When Xian walked down from the stairs, everyone's eyes turned towards Xian in unison. Seeing Xian walking over gracefully, everyone's eyes lit up. If it was said that the Xian of the morning was dressed like a sportswind, then the Xian of now had a cute, yet wild style. "Woo, it's so beautiful." Meng could not help but wave her arm and say. Hearing her daughter's praise, Xian's mouth raised up slightly, and walked over to Meng and sat on the left side of her. "Ayo, elder sister Yan, you really know how to dress up more and more." TSK, why didn't I realize this before? Could it be Zif wanted to make fun of her? Before she could finish her words, Xian opened her mouth first. "Someone is talking nonsense. Don't even think about drinking that kind of water." Burp. Zif braked and stopped herself from speaking. She burped and stared at Xian, her expression instantly becoming obedient and saying, "Is the beauty water?" "Ah, elder sister Yan, you are the best. Elder sister Yan, you are so beautiful. I will not speak carelessly anymore. I promise. I swear, I will not speak carelessly anymore." "Then remember it, HMPH. Xian let out a grunt, looked at Zhang Han, and said, "Give some of the water to Yes. We've prepared a lot this time. Everyone can drink a bit more." Zhang Han nodded, he stood up and walked out. He, brother-in-law is the best." Zif said joyfully, "Thank you. brother-in-law. Xian could not help but roll her eyes at these words. As it turned out, a woman's promises were just promises and oaths. It was just a simple word. Very quickly, Zhang Han brought the water bucket back. At the same time, Zif had already prepared several cups, and even prepared for Zhao Feng. Zhang Han took the water and poured it for everyone. This time, the quantity was enough for everyone to drink. Zhao Feng was not courteous at all. He was extremely curious about this kind of beautiful water. After drinking it, Zhang Han, Xian, Zhang Li, and Meng Meng did not have much reaction, but Zif and Zhao Feng's reaction was extremely intense. Not even 2 seconds had passed after drinking it, both of their stomachs continuously rumbled. Chapter 97. Meng Meng wanted to hear it. Fortunately, there was a bathroom upstairs and downstairs in the restaurant. Zif went upstairs and Zhao Feng was downstairs. Roughly 20 minutes later, the two of them walked out with a face full of energy. Elder sister Yan, take a look. See if my skin is smooth or not. Ha ha ha. Zif was so happy that she couldn't even close her mouth. After running over, she brought her face closer to Xian's side for her to see. Without waiting for Xian to speak, Zif once again moved her head closer to Meng Meng's side, and said, "Come Meng Meng. The skin of the Auntie Fei Fei is extremely good right now." "Eh? What?" Meng Meng asked, confused. "Kiss one." Zif extended a finger and pointed at her cheek. "NHMPH. No, Papa won't allow it." Meng Meng rejected her shamelessly. She then extended her hand and pushed Zif's head backwards. The little guy knew she could not kiss others, and even more could not let others kiss her. Otherwise, Papa would be angry. "Humphrey. If you don't want to, then don't." Zif snorted lightly, not minding at all. With beauty water, her skin would be better, but she was extremely happy. Then she sat down beside her and began to stink in the little mirror. "Boss, this water." Zhao Feng sat beside Zhang Han, with a tone of disbelief. There were all sorts of beauty products sold on the market, but he had never heard of anything that could improve a person's skin like the effect of drinking water just now. There was an old saying, one's hair is long and his knowledge is short, but Zhao Feng felt that in this restaurant, other than the owner, all other people, regardless of their age or gender, had become short-sighted. In the face of Zhao Feng's words, Zhang Han did not explain. Even if he told them about the spirit treasure, they would not understand. Cough. While speaking, Xian suddenly coughed lightly. Her beautiful eyes turned towards Zhang Han, and said, "Should someone play a song for us?" "Papa plays the piano. Even Meng Meng wants to play the piano. Papa, let's go quickly." Hearing that, Meng Meng remembered that Mama still did not know she could play the piano, so she anxiously reached out her hands, wanting to embrace Zhang Han. Seeing that, Zhang Han shook his head and laughed. He then stood up and hugged Meng Meng tightly. He walked to the piano and placed Meng Meng on the small sofa, then opened the piano and prepared to play. "Boss, I heard that his piano skills, it's in no way inferior to Director Lang's. He's very powerful, and he is one of the best among all masters." Zhao Feng thought about what Zhao Zhu had said. Zhao Feng didn't really understand much about the piano. He only knew that the piano music that Zhang Han played was especially pleasing to the ears, and as the vice director of the entertainment company, Zhao Zhu had a lot of understanding and authority to speak of in this regard. "Master, how could that be?" Zhang Li curled her lips and said, "My brother was previously level 10 amateur and has not played for many years. How could he become a master?" Zhang Li had a thorough understanding of her brother, and knew what level he was at a few years ago. However, what she did not know was that Zhang Han's age at zither was at least 500 years. "Damn, brother-in-law is actually at level 10. Awesome, awesome." Zif raised her thumb again and again. "He can play the piano. How unexpected." Xian smiled slightly. Regardless of whether he was level 10 or some other level, being able to play the piano was pretty good. This proved that the guy really liked music. Zhao Feng saw and shook his head with a smile without a word. They did not seem to believe that the boss was a grandmaster pianist, and upon seeing it with their own eyes, they would probably be shocked. "What song would you like to hear?" When Zhang Han was about to play the piano, he turned his head and asked, even though it was a question. His gaze was fixed on Xian. This made Zif and Zhang Li, who wanted to order some tune, to shut their mouths. This first piece of the piano piece was obviously for Xian, the landlady. "Listen." Xian muttered to herself for a moment, thinking about the piano pieces that she knew in her mind. She thought for a moment, then replied, "It's just Melody of the Night." "Ah, Melody of the Night. It's the piano piece of the dark sky." Meng Meng clapped her hands to welcome Zhang Han's performance. After Meng Meng clapped her hands a few times, the scene gradually quietened down. 1 second, 2 seconds. After 20 seconds, under everyone's expectant gaze, Zhang Han's hand started to move. An expert would know whether or not it was true the moment he made a move. Zhang Han had just played the melody a few times, causing everyone's spirits to rise. Some people played a piano piece, but only the sound of the piano piece had no spirit. However, there were also people who played a piano piece, which was extremely beautiful and captivating. Xian, Zif and Zhang Li all stared wide-eyed at the start, but slowly, they couldn't help but get drunk and enjoyed the beautiful music, especially Zif and Xian who understood music. At this moment, they felt goosebumps all over their bodies when they heard it. Night in the piano music series, each capital has different feelings, recorded one night after another: happy, sad, and, of course, happy feelings. The music style was mainly in the healing department. Every song in this series was quiet and soothing, causing the hearts and souls of the people to linger in it. The fifth song was the most popular, and the nights of the music that people often spoke of was the fifth song in this series. After the song ended, there was no applause. They were all enchanted by the serene atmosphere. On the other hand, Zhao Feng was a lot better. After all, he had heard Zhang Han play it a few times, so his endurance would naturally be a bit greater. Papa is so powerful. Meng Meng's childish voice brought them back to their thoughts. IFCK. Before Xian could say anything, Zif suddenly slammed the table and stood up. She stared with wide eyes, gasped for breath at Zhang Han and said, "Oh my God, brother-in-law, so this Stuart isn't just for show." "Amazing, brother-in-law. You're too awesome. I'm really going to admire you." "Oh God, it's so delicious to cook. And the piano is also so good to play. I even want to be invincible." "I believe, brother-in-law, you're really a master. Aren't you exaggerating?" Xian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and patted her. "It's not exaggerated at all. It's not exaggerated at all. Papa is the super invincible, most powerful." Meng Meng cheered. "That's right. Brother-in-law is amazing. Brother-in-law is awesome." Zif looked like a brainless fan. "Hurry up and sit down." Xian pulled Zif back to her seat. Her eyes filled with killing intent allowed Zif's emotions to calm down. This careless Zif would always say some vulgar words in front of Meng Meng. "What else do you want to hear?" At this time, Zhang Han asked again. Xian thought for a bit, and just as she was about to speak, Zif spoke first. "Brother-in-law, do you know how to play the third piano concerto? If you can use that, then you're really amazing." After saying that, Xian was slightly stunned. She pursed her lips and looked at Zif, and said, "This third piano concerto is one of the world's 10 great difficult pianos. It is also a large piece of work, famous for its strong emotional expression and difficult performance skills. This piece is known as the King of the Piano Concerto." "Zhang Han, I wonder if you can play this." Xian really hoped that Zhang Han would be good at the piano. If that was the case, then she and Zhang Han might be able to perform a show regarding marriage in the future. Papa, where did he go?" Zhang Li and Zhao Feng did not know about this song, but after hearing that it was one of the top 10 difficult songs in the world, they understood the concept behind it. Most people liked the melodious style of the piano pieces during the night. However, for those with high difficulty levels, many people were not used to listening to them, while those professionals would be mesmerized by them. If it were another person asking Zhang Han, Xian would probably feel troubled, but after listening to Zhang Han's tune, Zhang also wanted to know what level Zhang Han was. Third piano concerto? Zhang Han shook his head and said, I don't know. Ah? It can't be. Zif was slightly stunned, and couldn't help but look a little disappointed. Even Zhang had that feeling, because the expectations just now were too big. When she heard such a word, she couldn't help but feel that it was a little bit different. Meng waved her small arms and stopped. She did not understand what was happening when she saw Zif and the others' expressions. Papa, how could you not know? Papa is the strongest. In the little princess heart, Papa is an invincible existence. When Meng opened her mouth, a light flashed across Zhao Feng's eyes. He had been in the restaurant for a while now, and Zhao Feng knew that as long as Meng asked, there was nothing that Zhang Han could not solve. It was just that he didn't know whether Zhang Han would be able to maintain his legendary omnipotent father this time around. Sure enough, after Meng opened her mouth, Zhang Han's expression paused for a moment. He turned his body, took out his mobile phone from his pocket, smiled and patted Meng's head, and said, Meng wants to hear it? Yes. Meng nodded her head obediently. She liked the surprises of others when Papa was the most powerful. Then Daddy, take a look at the score. Zhang Han used his phone to search for the piano piece. The score was very long, but Zhang Han was looking at it in 10 lines. The spirit energy in his body was circulating around his head, allowing his memory to reach the state of eyeless memory, so much less a mere piano piece. Even if he were to bring over the entire set of the class, it would only be a matter of 2 hours. Seeing Zhang Han's appearance, Zif and the rest were slightly startled. On the go, brother-in-law, can you do it? Zif said with some suspicion. If he says so, so be it. Let's just wait and see. Zhang smiled slightly. She had confidence in Zhang Han. From meeting Meng, letting him come to Hong Kong, visiting the Peach Blossom Valley, coming to this restaurant, Zhang Han had never gone back on his words. I believe my brother can do it too. Isn't it just a tune? What's the big deal? Zhang Li snorted. This isn't a problem with songs, but it's a problem with difficulty. To be able to become one of the top 10 in the world, how could it be played by a normal level 10? Zif laughed bitterly, wanting to indirectly explain the difficulty of the song, but before she could finish, the melodious sound of a piano playing. Chapter 98, Astonishing. Third. Shwa. The few of them turned to look at the source of the voice. Zhang Han's fingers had already started dancing on the piano. In the beginning, it was a rather melodious prelude. Although it was a melody, its speed was much faster than that of an ordinary song. It was much more complicated, and all of them revealed their positions as one of the top 10 difficult songs. Zif was dumbstruck. Just a few minutes? Could he play the music just by looking at the score? How is this possible? He must have been fooling people before. In an instant, all these thoughts flashed through Zif's mind. She simply could not believe that someone would be able to remember this piece of music in just a few minutes. At this time, Zhang Li and Zhao Feng had strange looks in their eyes as well. Zhang and Zhang Li did not really believe that Zhang Han played it for crash course, because it was too unbelievable. However, in Zhao Feng's heart, he felt that the boss might really be watching the show from the sidelines. It could be said that his confidence in Zhang Han was the greatest on the scene. The few of them were a little confused at first, but they gradually invested themselves into the music ceremony. Zhang Han played the third piano concerto. It was melodious, even slower than the original, and when it was compact, his speed was ridiculously much faster, causing the song to have a soul-shaking effect. It also seemed to give this piano piece a different color, making the room silent except for the sound of the piano. Unknowingly, the piano piece came to an end and gradually ended. Wow! Meng opened her eyes wide, staring at Papa without blinking, with a face like a little chick. She cheered out loud, Papa is too handsome, too awesome. He is really powerful. Zhang looked at Zhang Han with amazement and admiration, and said, I really didn't expect that your piano skills would already be at the level of a grandmaster. You're truly amazing. While talking, Xian's eyes shone with a strange light. She was really happy at that moment. She was furious when Zhang Han said that actors were actually show people. But now, Xian felt that it was just Zhang Han's angry words. Since he understood music, he must also understand the dream of the musician. HMPH, this bastard. When he's angry, he'll say anything. What a bastard. Apostrophe. He really knows how to play the piano. It looks like he's quite handsome. Master piano. HMPH, maybe we can even write songs together in the future. Apostrophe. No, that's not right. He'll have to beg me. Otherwise, I won't talk to him first. HMPH. At this time, Xian's heart was actually as complicated and messy as a girl's, but at the same time, it was filled with joy. All of this was because Zhang Han was too surprising to her. When that small knot in her heart was resolved, she naturally felt great, and it was understandable that her mood would become a little complicated. Of course, it was normal for a weirdo like Xian, who had children without having experienced love, to have a girl's heart. Oh my god. What's the situation? Suddenly, Zif jumped up from her chair. She looked at Zhang Han in shock and fear. Her body could not help but tremble, revealing her extremely excited emotions. What's wrong? Xian returned to her senses and looked at her in confusion. Why did it seem like she was in a daze? Oh my god, elder sister Yan, oh my god, how long has it been? Oh my god, 20 minutes. Brother-in-law only used 20 minutes to play this piano piece. Damn. Isn't this too inconceivable? How is that possible? This is going to break the world record. Zif's face was filled with excitement, and she was at a loss of what to do. When these words came out, the complexions of Xian, Zhang Li and Zhao Feng all slightly changed. Are you for real? Only 20 minutes? Xian subconsciously stood up. It's true. When we first started playing, it was 10:50 p.m. Now it's 11:10 p.m. It's definitely 20 minutes. Zif pointed to the watch on her wrist. Ah! Xian let out a soft cry as she covered her lips with her lily-white hands. She looked at Zhang Han with her eyes wide opened, and for a moment, did not know what to say. As for Zhao Feng and Zhang Li, although they did not understand the specific meaning behind those words, they knew that Zhang Han's actions just now must have been too shocking. Humphrey. However, it was Meng who said with a proud expression, Papa is, the most powerful. That's right, your dad is really crazy. What a pity. I should have been recording it just now. Sigh. If I were to record it on the internet, it would definitely be able to cause a huge earthquake in the piano industry. Why am I so stupid? I should have recorded it. Oh, my little darling. Zif said with a frown. Seeing her expression, Xian knew that she was truly upset. She glanced at Zhang Han and coughed lightly to remind him. The song was not recorded, but he is right there. Burp. She quickly reacted and looked towards Zhang Han. She took out her phone to directly record a video and said at the same time, brother-in-law, if you come again, with your skills, I'm sure you'll be able to beat everything up in the piano industry. When you get hot, I'll be your manager. No, I'll be the same manager for you and elder sister Yan, the husband and wife combination. Oh God. It's a perfect match. Her words were incoherent, but her expression, tone, and words all expressed the excitement in her heart. Zhang Han looked at Zif, slightly speechless. This girl was a little crazy. Did Zhang Han still play it after recording just a moment ago? He wasn't in the mood to play with her. But just when he was about to refuse, Meng who was at the side already opened her mouth and refused. NHMPH. Papa played it twice, it is time for Meng to perform. Come on, Meng. Zhang Han ignored Zif, smiled at Meng and then hugged her in his arms. Hey, Mama, are you ready? Meng is about to begin. Meng reminded her before she played the music. Mama, get ready. Let's begin. It's starting. Meng replied happily as she pressed down on the piano key. A clear and melodious sound of a zither rang out, accompanied by Meng's childish yet pleasant voice. Twinkle, twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. After singing for 2 minutes, Meng Meng retracted her hand, and asked with a face full of anticipation, "How is it?" "It's too nice. Meng Meng is so powerful." Xian clapped first. Zhao Feng, Zhang Li, and Zif also clapped together as they praised. Even Meng Meng can play the piano at such a young age. Meng Meng will definitely be even more powerful in the future. Meng Meng's treatment in the restaurant could be said to be the highest, because she was a cute and beautiful little girl, and also because she was Xian's daughter, but also because she was the treasure in Zhang Han's hands. Hearing the praises of the few of them, Meng Meng was extremely happy as she laughed non-stop. "Hey hey hey, brother-in-law, don't put it down. Do you want to play that song again?" Seeing that Zhang Han was about to put down the lid, Zif hurriedly said. However, Zhang Han didn't even bother to pay attention to him, as he directly put down the lid and returned to the dining table with Meng Meng in his arms. Only now did he look at the dumbfounded Zif, and said, "Next time then." "Next time." Zif's expression froze as she said somewhat vexedly, "Unhumph, Papa only plays twice every time." Meng Meng added, "Yes, the boss can only play 2 piano pieces at a time, and it might not even be at every meal. Every time we hear it, we don't hear enough." Zhao Feng said with a chuckle. "Huh?" Xian looked at Zhang Han strangely, and said, "You even have such a rule?" "It's not really a rule. After eating dinner, you can take a rest and play 2 piano pieces at the same time." Zhang Han replied. "Then brother-in-law, can you play it again?" Zif said again. She was thinking of recording this video for Zhang Han now, and she knew that once this video was uploaded to the internet, it would cause a huge wave that would fill the entire world's piano industry. But Zhang Han still shook his head and said, "I don't want to play." With these words, he rejected Zif. Seeing Zif's vexed expression, Zhang Han said in amusement, "It's almost 11:30. I should be preparing lunch. I think the customers will all be coming up soon." "All right, I'll record the video for you next time." Zif nodded obediently. "Bro, what are we having for lunch?" Hearing that Zhang Han was going to cook, Zhang Li immediately became spirited. She was truly a gluttonous foodie. "There are a few potatoes, as well as beans and cucumbers. What would you like to eat?" Zhang Han said casually. In this world, these ingredients are already considered top in the world. But in the end, Zhang Han had tasted the rare delicacies of the myriad heavens and earth before, so his standards were much higher than normal. Even when he ate, he felt that it was only ordinary food, but others didn't think so. Hearing Zhang Han's question, Zhao Feng was somehow excited in his heart. He felt that if he got to know the boss, he could probably order dishes. "I want chicken," Zhang Li said very happily. "I want meat too," Zif quickly added. "I'm fine," Xian said softly. "I'll eat whatever the boss cooks." Zhao Feng felt that he didn't have the right to speak, and at the same time, he felt that the boss would eat whatever he cooked, so he replied accordingly. "Chicken can't be done at noon, but it can be done at night," Zhang Han replied. "Oh yeah, brother-in-law, is there any noodles?" Zif glanced at Xian and reminded him, "Elder sister Yan likes to eat noodles, for example, wonton noodles, hand-rolled noodles and so on." "Oh yeah, there's also hot pot. Elder sister Yan especially likes to eat hot pot." "Brother-in-law, I gave you all this news for free." "Oh." Zhang Han looked at her and replied indifferently. Seeing that, Xian was secretly relieved. "What do you mean?" Chapter 99, that incident from the beginning. On the other hand, Meng Meng raised her little hand and said, "Meng Meng also really likes to eat hot pot. And there's even some noodles that I like to eat as well." "Meng Meng likes to eat noodles too?" Zhang Han's reaction was much stronger than before. He looked at Meng Meng and said without hesitation, "All right, then we'll eat noodles at noon." Little did he know that these words made Xian feel a sense of jealousy. How could he be like this? Why didn't he ask me? Ignore the landlady? Xian's mood instantly fell to the bottom. While feeling jealous, she was also a bit unhappy. This bastard, can't he just ask her that? Even a polite remark would be fine. HMPH. ignore him in the future. He wants to court me just like this. Just you wait, bastard. Xian's killing intent towards Zhang Han had already surged, but Zhang Han did not know what was going on. Instead, he muttered to himself and looked at Meng Meng. Then what pasta does Meng Meng want to eat? Steamed bun, noodle or wonton or something? There were too many types of pasta. Zhang Han didn't know what to do either. And the key issue was that there weren't many ingredients here, so that he would be greatly restricted. For example, there were steamed buns, soup dumplings, beef buns, pork buns and other meat buns. There were squash and egg buns, leek and egg buns, etc. I want to eat that. It's that noodle. Very thin. Mama, what is that? Meng Meng described it for a while, but she did not know what kind of noodles she had eaten before. They are fine dried noodles. Xian replied as her beautiful eyes rolled into a white line. Xian did not know how to cook. When she was with her children, the nanny usually cook, or head out to the dining area. Sometimes she would eat Western cuisine, sometimes she would eat some noodle soup, but relatively speaking, she ate hot pot. For most time, Xian loved to eat noodles. Even Meng Meng liked to eat it since she was young. And that fine dried noodle, which was the only thing that Xian knew how to make, she had been cooked a few times for Meng Meng since she was young. Adults and children all like to eat it a lot. That's right. They are just fine dried noodles. Meng Meng chuckled. Then we'll make thin noodles for Meng Meng at noon. Zhang Han laughed as he rubbed Meng Meng's head. Humphrey. I went upstairs. Xian rolled her eyes at Zhang Han again. This made Zhang Han quite confused. Why was this girl always so unfriendly with him? Of course, Zhang Han knew that it was a good thing to have this kind of unfriendly attitude. It was just like saying that his girlfriend would have a bad temper. Sometimes, her boyfriend would really hate himself for making trouble. But he didn't know that only his girlfriend would like to do that. However, if she really started to have a short temper with others, he wouldn't be that far away from being broken up. Of course, Zhang Han knew about this too. Sometimes, Xian treated him differently from others, and it was actually a good start. If Zhang Han didn't even know about this, then his EQ wouldn't be too low. Returning to the main topic, when Meng Meng saw that Mama was about to go upstairs, she extended her arms for Mama. Xian carried Meng Meng in one go, and when she felt Meng Meng's weight, she chuckled and patted Meng Meng's little butt a few times. She laughed. Meng Meng seems to be heavier than usual. Looks like I won't be able to carry you in a while. MHMPH. That's not it. Mama has been able to carry Meng Meng. The little princess was dancing in Mama's arms. Zif thought for a moment, then followed along. Zhang Li and Zhao Feng stayed on the first floor. Bro, when did you settle it for sister-in-law? How come I've never heard of you have dealings with her? Zhang Li was extremely curious about this matter. When Zhang Li knew Meng Meng, she could estimate that Xian was pregnant when her families were separated. At that time, Zhang Han was also like the sun in the sky as well, and he always had the appearance of a scammer. If he was together with Xian at that time, with his personality, he would definitely take Xian on tour around Shangjing. Ya! Zhang Li suddenly called out softly. She remembered. At that time, Zhang Han and Qiaoluoluo were probably still male and female friends, so Zhang Li stared. Brother, you were with Qiaoluoluo then, was it that you and Xian secretly? Did you step on two boats? When she said these words, Zhao Feng was startled, and even his ears pricked up, as he looked carefully at the scene before him. Although he felt that he might be gossiping a little, he was truly very curious about Zhang Han's situation. Nope. Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said it is just an incident. Humphrey. Brother, you just lie to me. What incident can bring you to bed? What incident can produce a child? Zhang Li said with a light snort. Zhang Han shook his head while smiling, and said, it's the same time that I was beat by Zheng Qiang up. Huh? Zhang Li glared and said, you beat him because of a sister-in-law. Yes, I drank too much that time. Zhang Han gave a simple explanation. At the same time, he thought back to that time. Xian had been extremely popular back then, and she had the opportunity to be the Queen of Shadows in the next year. That time when Xian came to the Shangjing, she was introduced by a high-ranking official of the SAFT and had a collaboration with Zheng Qing's broad sense of the group. Zheng Qing was the chairman of the Guangming group. He was only 30 years old, and was also a direct descendant of the Zheng family of the Shangjing. He was in a high position, and according to his identity, he was slightly higher than Zhang Han at the time. However, Zheng Qing was also a decisive person. He had thought of Xian for more than a year, and during their cooperation, he finally found a chance to add a few extra things to Xian's wine, making Xian's mind a mess. As for Zhang Han, who had just broken up with Qiaoluoluo, he was quite angry in his heart as well. Breaking up in that kind of manner could also be considered a blow to Zhang Han. That time at the higher end of Shangjing's Clear Sky Entertainment Club, Zhang Han drank a lot and blurrily walked into the wrong room. He saw the struggling Xian and Zheng Qing's hideous face. Furious, Zhang Han picked up the wine bottle and slapped Zheng Qing's head hard, immediately making him unconscious. He picked up Xian and left the clubhouse, ordering a presidential suite in a nearby hotel. Xian was unconscious during that period. She even wanted to take off the clothes. Although Zhang Han liked beauty, he also had a sense of propriety, and held on to Xian's hand tightly along the way. In his room at the hotel, Zhang Han felt even more confused after getting drunk, and Xian was even more confused than him. Just as Zhang Han wanted to leave, Xian's tender white palm grabbed Zhang Han's hand and pulled him back onto the bed, allowing Zhang Han to fall down. An entire night had passed. Although Zhang Han was initially drunk, he could still vaguely remember the charming scene from that night. He still had some impression of Xian's graceful figure. Recalling the scenes from the morning of the second day, Zhang Han could not help but chuckle twice. But these words were all just thinking in his heart. Zhang Han did not explain it to Zhang Li, he only said that he saved Xian from Zheng Qing. So the boss was the hero who saved the beauty back then. Zhao Feng said with a light smile. This kind of hero saving a beauty sounded like a very beautiful story. A hero saving a beauty is also something worth being proud of. If it wasn't for my brother being the marshal, how could they be together? Zhang Li curled her lips. In her opinion, there was a condition for a hero to save a beauty, and that condition was that a man should be a bit more handsome. You're right, the boss is indeed handsome, Zhao Feng replied. While talking, Liang Mengkai and the other two quickly walked in. Seeing Zhao Feng sitting at the dining table and chatting with Zhang Han, Liang Mengkai smiled and said, Zhao Feng, you came very early. I didn't leave this morning. Zhao Feng replied. Oh. Liang Mengkai nodded. Zhao Zhu and Zhu Qingqing also greeted Zhang Han and then sat at their usual table. Time to cook. Zhang Han looked at the time. 11:40 a.m. He then got up and walked towards the kitchen to prepare today's lunch. The first thing he did was to cook the rice. Normally, the water used to cook the rice was also from Mount New Moon's spirit water. Of course, the Mount New Moon's wheat and rice were equal in status, so it would be extraordinary to grow under the same environment as the Mount New Moon. At the same time that they cooked the rice, Zhang Han beat up the eggs. In the current egg-fried rice, almost 30 of them had to be fried in a single meal, causing the number of eggs stored to decrease. Originally, Zhang Han had planned to sell less food when his eggs were almost consumed, but he didn't need to worry too much about Mount New Moon's current situation. Pure Yang water still had some reserves and was about 20 liters left. It was enough for him to buy some adult hens, cattle, sheep, pigs, and so on to feed Pure Yang water. After he was done, Zhang Han started to sort out a few large potatoes. The potatoes were round and plump. Under normal circumstances, some of the potatoes sold outside would have some concave spots, which were not very neat, but the Mount New Moon potatoes were round and like a shot ball. Zhang Han took out his paring knife and quickly waved it. Shwish wish wah. The potato skin quickly left its body. In the dining hall, not only was the food extremely delicious, even Zhang Han's cooking process was extremely beautiful. and the rate of viewing the dishes was extremely high. After he finished preparing the potatoes, he began preparing the chopped green onion and other supplementary ingredients. By the time they finished their preparations, it was already midnight. The customers came one after another, and the table beside the window had already been filled with 6 people. However, this time, the 6 of them were all staff from the neighboring restaurant. After tasting the dishes, they were unable to extricate themselves and would always come over for lunch. "Boss, what food we have to eat today?" Liang Mengkai's eyes lit up when she saw that Zhang Han had prepared potatoes and cucumbers. "Yes." Zhang Han nodded. "What's that?" Yu Qingqing quickly asked. "Tofu and cucumber." Zhang Han replied. Chapter 100, Noodle Soup. Flavor cold dish? That's great. Yu Qingqing said happily. She loved these side dishes very much. Zhang Han had specially prepared these 2 cold dish, because they wanted to eat noodles at noon. With cold dish, it could be said to be a perfect match. Potato filament is a famous flavor dish in Zhejiang province, which belongs to Zhejiang province. The procedure is very simple. Cut the potatoes into shreds, put the shredded potatoes into clear water, to prevent the potatoes from rusting and discoloration. Make the potatoes silk fly water clear and cooked. Reserve the red and green peppers. Cut the shredded potatoes into pieces. Cool them with cold water. Add the red and green peppers. Put in a teaspoon of pepper oil, a teaspoon of chili oil, a little salt, a little message, a little sesame oil. Add with a little vinegar. Then mix them according to personal taste. It was just the usual procedure, but in this restaurant, there was a king of seasonings, fragrant wood. No matter what dish it was, as long as the fragrant wood was sprinkled, the fragrance would make one's mouth water. The other one was a cucumber shot. It was also a very common household dish, so the recipe was even simpler. The main ingredient was cucumber, which was made with various seasonings. It was cool and refreshing, suitable for summer. The cucumber was cold. Eating in summer could clear heat and remove fire, eliminate toxins from the body, and it also had beauty effect. Furthermore, eating cucumber in summer with delicious taste could also help digestion. Slapping cucumber has the effect of opening up the stomach. In addition to low calorie, cucumber can remove dampness, heat and detoxification. Its dietary fiber has the effect of promoting the excretion of toxic substances and lowering cholesterol. In fresh cucumber, propanedioic acid, which inhibits the conversion of sugar to fat, has the function of weight loss. Of course, if one were to describe the effects on the market, they would not mention the effects. If it were only that kind of pure green food, then it would be fine. Furthermore, not only was the green food nutritious, but their effects were also very good. This was what people usually called nourishing food. And for crops grown in the Mount New Moon, this nourishment would increase by 2 times. It could be said that eating New Moon-based food all year round would greatly improve one's physical health. At present, the people in the big city were all living in a hot water environment, where day and night were reversed, and their bodies were in a sub-healthy state. The hospital was becoming more and more popular. However, life was like this. The times had progressed. No one could change anything, so eating a little bit more pure green, healthy food was also a very good choice. Otherwise, the food on the market would not be of all kinds. Pure green food would be more expensive. The good food from the production area would be called special food, which would be called private use. Back to the main topic, there were more and more people lining up outside the restaurant at noon. It could be said that after several days of brewing, Meng Meng's casual restaurant already had a bit of fame in this street. As long as one wasn't blind, they could see it from nearby. Huh? Suddenly, a blonde foreign friend who was casually walking on the street made a sound of surprise and walked towards the restaurant. He first observed the area outside the dining room. From the clean and bright floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see that the interior was neatly decorated. It looks pretty good. Let's try it out here at noon. The golden-haired man mumbled in English and walked to the place where the customers lined up. He looked at the people beside him and smiled. He asked in Chinese with the curled lips, "Hello, Is this restaurant great? More than great. Let me tell you, this restaurant is the best restaurant I've had since I was a kid, beyond anyone else. The man beside him replied solemnly, Is it really that powerful? The golden-haired man's eyes lit up. Of course. When a young girl at the back saw her foreign brother was very handsome, she smiled and said, He's not exaggerating at all. This is the best meal I've had since I was young. It's super delicious. You would feel sorry if you didn't taste it. The blonde man smiled and said, Then what are the specialties of the delicacies here? Egg fried rice. What else? Egg fried rice. Is there nothing else? Yes. Oh, that's good. What is the specialty of the delicacy? Egg fried rice. Puff. This foreign brother. Finally, the young man next to the blonde man patted his arm and said, There's a lot of delicious food here, but you won't be able to eat it. We can only try the egg fried rice. Why? The golden-haired man asked in confusion. Do you recognize Chinese characters? I do. The golden-haired man nodded. Then take a look at the notice board over there and you'll know why. All right. The golden-haired man nodded and walked to the side of the door. He looked at the notice board very seriously and muttered, Business hours? Only 3 hours. 300 yuan for each serving of egg fried rice and 100 yuan for each serving of milk. Do other dishes have to be tasted by members? Oh my God! When he saw the information below, he suddenly exclaimed in shock and could not believe his eyes. A membership card for 1,000,000 yuan per card, and it was even the top 10, followed by 10 million membership cards. Heavens, how could a 10 million membership card be possible? At this moment, he was completely dumbfounded, and he didn't know what was going on. He returned to his seat in a daze. Seeing his expression, the crowd couldn't help but let out satisfied smiles. This was completely within reason. When they had first seen this news, their stunned expressions hadn't been any less than his. After a while, the blonde man came back to his senses. He had a complicated expression on his face as he took out his cell phone from his pocket and gave the restaurant a sign. He then opened his notebook and wrote, Meng's Casual Restaurant, 3020 Street, 20 year 20 at noon record. It was a very special restaurant. There were tens of people lining up at the door. It was a bustling business. The restaurant had a membership system, from 1 to 10, each membership card costed 1 million, number 11 to 20, 10 million each. It was inconceivable. The non-member temporarily only had egg fried rice and milk. Egg fried rice was 300 yuan per serving. Milk was 100 yuan per cup. The price was slightly higher. After recording all of this, the golden-haired man put away his phone and waited silently for the crowd to line up. In the dining hall, when the food was about to be cooked, Zhang Han took out the big pot, which was filled with spirit water that were poured into the Mount New Moon, and placed it on the stove to boil the water. Seeing this, Liang Mengkai's eyes lit up, and hurriedly asked, Boss, do we have new delicacies? Yes. What's that? Noodle soup. The noodle soup? That's fine too. I'll try it later. Liang Mengkai said in a slightly disappointed tone. She had eaten noodle soup a few times, but in the end, it was really just noodle soup, just like how it passed the water surface. She didn't have any experience with taste buds at all, and after that, Liang Mengkai had never eaten a noodle soup again. However, she still looked forward to what Zhang Han had cooked. After all, there had never been a time when the boss's food tasted bad. On the other hand, the eyes of Yu Qingqing and Zhao Du, who were standing in front of him, lit up. Zhao Feng, who was at the side, shook his head slightly. He knew that if he wanted to eat something good, he had to get on good terms with the owner. In the morning, he had heard from Jiang Li that they had eaten chicken last night, and the fragrance that was described by them made Zhao Feng drool uncontrollably. Now that Zhao Feng had seen Yu Qingqing and the others like this, if he were to say it out loud, he would probably spoil their appetite. Noodle soup were food that Zhang Han decided to prepare after considering it. It was simple and tasty, but the key thing was that the quality of the Mount New Moon's noodles was good, and it could completely explain the true meaning of noodle soup. Noodle soup were Chinese noodles snacks. As the name implied, it was basically not flavorings, especially those that were colored. For example, soy sauce, cooking wine, meat broth, red oil, etc. The noodle soup was its original flavor, embodying the pure fragrance of the noodle soup. The pure white noodles and clear soup with a few side dishes made it taste light and refreshing. There were a few procedures for cooking the noodle soup. The noodle soup, the sliced noodle soup, and the noodle soup were all quite complicated. Experienced people and inexperienced people used the same noodle soup to make the noodle soup. Sometimes, in order to ensure the strength of the noodles, a scientific proportion of salt water was added. The salt water and the noodles would increase the strength of the dough, making it easier to pull the noodles, so that there would not be a situation where the dough was broken or too thick. But Zhang Han didn't need it at all. With Mount New Moon's spirit water here, why need anything like salt water? Zhang Han prepared the dough. There was a lot of knowledge in kneading dough, but it was not always possible to fill up the bowl of water at once. One could dig a pit in the middle of the flour and slowly pour the water into it, stirring it slowly with chopsticks. When the water is sucked dry by the flour, knead the flour repeatedly with your hands so that the flour becomes many small pieces of flour, commonly known as snowflake noodles. In this way, the flour will not be too late to absorb and spread everywhere, or stick full of paste. And then sprinkle water on the snowflake, hand stirring, so that it becomes a ball of small dough, called grape noodles. At this time, the flour has not absorbed enough moisture and its hardness is quite large. The flour can be compressed into a piece, and the paste on the basin or panel can be wiped off forcefully. Then, the flour on the grape flour can be washed and sprinkled on the grape flour so that the grape flour can be kneaded into a smooth flour fungus with both hands. This kind of blending method is called 3 steps of adding water, which can make the whole blending process clean, flexible, and achieve the effect of dough light, basin light, hand light. When Zhang Han was kneading the dough, the spirit energy in his body was flowing into his hands, making the kneading process much more efficient. If it were another person, then he would have taken 8 or 10 minutes to mend the noodles, but Zhang Han only took 2 minutes. Now that the noodles were ready, the boiling water was almost boiling. At this time, the second step was to cut the noodles. Just as Zhang Han was about to pick up the blade, he thought for a moment and then retracted his hand. Boss, the way you knead dough is so cool. At this time, Liang Mengkai came over. She didn't really feel it before, but now she felt that a man who could cook was really handsome. No, it should be that the owner was really handsome. After all, no one could cook such a delicious meal except their boss. Boss's handmade noodles will definitely smell good. Liang Mengkai pressed her hands on the counter, her eyes brimming with vitality as she watched Zhang Han's actions.